Grateful to the President of Russia, the President of Kenya, and the Prime Minister of Vietnam for their presence at today's event. Excellencies, oceans are our shared global commons. They are also the lifeline of international trade. Above all, they are key to our planet's future. The oceans are extremely important for our planet's future. However, today, this common maritime heritage of ours faces various types of threats. Maritime routes are being misused for piracy and terrorism. There are maritime disputes between several countries, and climate change and natural disasters are also challenges to the maritime domain. In this context, we need a framework for mutual cooperation in order to conserve and utilize our shared maritime heritage. Such a framework cannot be created by any country alone. It requires joint efforts by all of us. It was with this thought that we decided to bring this very important subject to the UN Security Council. I am confident that today's high-level debate will provide the necessary guidance to the international community on the subject of maritime security. Excellencies, I would like to put forward 5 basic principles to provide a structure for today's debate. The first principle is that we need to remove barriers to legitimate maritime trade. Global prosperity for all our nations depends on the active flow of maritime trade. Any hindrance in maritime trade can threaten the entire global economy. Free maritime trade has always been part of the civilizational ethos of India. Thousands of years ago, the Lothal port of the Indus Valley civilization had extensive maritime trade linkages with its contemporary civilizations. It was in the free maritime environment of the ancient world that Lord Buddha's message of peace and harmony could spread across the world. In the present context, based on this open and inclusive ethos, India has put forward the vision of Sagar, security and growth for all in the region. Through this vision, we want to create an inclusive framework for maritime security in our region. The vision aims for a safe, secure, and stable maritime domain. For free maritime trade, it is also necessary that we fully respect the rights of the seafarers of other countries.
The second principle is that maritime disputes should be resolved peacefully and in accordance with international law. This is extremely important for promoting mutual trust and confidence and ensuring global peace and stability. It was with this understanding and maturity that India resolved its maritime boundary with its neighbor Bangladesh. The third principle is that we should jointly fight maritime threats from natural disasters and non-state actors. India has taken several initiatives to promote regional cooperation on this principle. We have been the first responder during cyclones, tsunamis, and pollution-related maritime disasters in our region. Since 2008, Indian Navy has been patrolling to counter piracy in the Indian Ocean. We are enhancing the common maritime domain awareness of the region through our White Shipping Information Fusion Center. We have provided support for hydrographic surveying and training of maritime security personnel to several countries. India's role in the Indian Ocean has been that of a net security provider. The fourth principle, we need to conserve maritime environment and marine resources. Our oceans directly impact our climate, and hence it is very important that we keep our maritime environment free of pollutants like plastic waste and oil spills. We also need to take joint steps against overfishing and marine poaching. At the same time, we need to increase mutual cooperation in ocean science research. India has launched an ambitious deep ocean mission. We have also taken several initiatives to promote sustainable fishing. The fifth principle, we need to promote responsible maritime connectivity. It is well understood that creation of infrastructure is necessary to boost maritime trade. However, in such infrastructure projects, it is important to pay attention to fiscal sustainability and absorption capacity of the host countries. For this, we should develop appropriate global norms and standards. Excellencies, I'm confident that we can develop a global roadmap for maritime security cooperation based on these 5 principles. The active and high-level participation in today's open debate demonstrates the importance of this subject for all the members of the UN Security Council. Once again, I thank you all for participating in today's open debate. Thank you.
Excellencies, I now give the floor to Council members. First, on my list is my dear friend, President Putin of the Russian Federation. Excellency, you have the floor.
The interpreter reports that there is no sound. The speaker's microphone appears to be muted. The sound is now coming through.
Interpretation. DRC, please mute your microphone. Thank you.
S'il vous plaît, madame.
Il faut fermer votre microphone, s'il vous plaît.
Oui. Je vais essayer de fermer. Voilà. Ça va comme ça?
Non, on vous entend toujours. Russian interpreter, we cannot hear the English interpretation.
Vous avez un problème ici, là. Ici, ça. Non. J'ai un problème technique, je m'excuse beaucoup, j'essaye de fermer le micro.
Pardonnez-moi, est-ce que vous pouvez arrêter de parler, s'il vous plaît, parce qu'il y a une autre orateur. Merci.
Oh là là. Comment on peut fermer le micro ici assez rapidement?
That Russia promotes strict adherence to key norms and principles of the international law enshrined in the UN Charter, such as respect for sovereignty, non-intervention in the internal affairs, and settling disputes through dialogue. I hope that participants of our deliberation will concur with my saying that the UN principles must be observed in peaceful and responsible use of maritime spaces, their natural resources, protection of the marine environment, sustainable economic activity in the vast global ocean. As one of the leading maritime powers, Russia is doing a lot to maintain and strengthen international rule of law in maritime security. Our country is actively engaged on the full range of these matters in the UN, as well as in multiple regional formats, including in the contact group on piracy off the coast of Somalia, ASEAN Regional Forum, as well as East Asia summits.
Russia also wants to build productive cooperation with the Indian Ocean Rim Association and the Indian Ocean Commission. Undoubtedly, we aim to help ensure security in the area of the Persian Gulf, in the Gulf of Guinea, in the Atlantic Ocean, where we have seen a growing number of maritime robberies and hostage-taking. The situation is aggravated by the fact that some countries cannot fight against transnational crime syndicates, pirates, and terrorists on their own. That is why we are discussing the issues of uniting under the aegis of the UN the capacities of special services and relevant armed contingents of all interested states. Russia is prepared to share our experience of anti-terrorist operations, crime prevention, identification and neutralization of crime gangs, including those operating in maritime areas. We think it would be useful to share our experience and best practices of countering piracy, armed robberies, and other maritime criminal activities on a regular basis. In this context, we should think about establishing a special structure within the UN system that would directly deal with the issue of fighting maritime crime in various regions. This structure should be based on the support of the UN member states and actively engage experts, representatives of civil society, academia, and private sector. We hope that our partners would consider Russia's proposal in a constructive manner. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate that the Russian Federation is committed to our joint goal of fighting maritime crime in all of its forms and manifestations. We are prepared to continue supporting the development of equal international cooperation on the topic of maritime security. Once again, I would like to thank our Indian friends for their useful initiative of holding this meeting, and I would like to wish India every success as the chair of the United Nations Security Council in August. Dear colleagues, thank you for your...
I thank President Putin for his statement. Thank you for your patience in this meeting. Russia is always played an important role in global maritime security. It is an important player in global security, safety, and prosperity. I now give the floor to my friend, the President of Kenya.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, the Right Honorable Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, Excellency, Council members, let me begin by saying I welcome India's presidency of the Council this month, and indeed, thank you for holding this important debate. I also want to thank Ms. Maria Viotti and Ms. Gada Wali for their briefings earlier. Your Excellency, we must value a resource in order to protect it. The maritime domain and the related blue economy is one such precious resource. We depend on the maritime domain for food security, navigation, for international trade, tourism, and ecological heritage, among other essential aspects for our citizens' livelihoods. However, the maritime domain is inadvertently a field prone to insecurity that affects coastal nations and entire region stability. Piracy, narcotic trafficking, arms smuggling, and other transnational threats all thrive in the maritime space, undercutting government authority and investor confidence. Your Excellency is cognizant of the development potential of the maritime domain. Kenya has and continues to champion environmentally friendly and sustainable exploitation of the blue economy. Indeed, it is in this context that in November of 2018, together with Canada and Japan, we hosted the first ever Global Sustainable Blue Economy Conference in Nairobi, attracting delegates from over 184 countries. The conference dedicated a session to maritime security, recognizing that a secure maritime domain is an enabler for seaborne trade, jobs, as well as wealth creation. Kenya, therefore, welcomes this debate as continuing conversation on the subject and the Council's contribution to the attainment of the aspirations of the 2018 Nairobi Sustainable Blue Economy Conference. Mr. President, Kenya is an Indian Ocean rim state. This means that we are part of a region that brings together countries from 3 continents with different sizes, economic strengths, and a wide diversity of languages and cultures. Today, when we look into the greater Indian Ocean rim, we see a vibrant grouping that has recorded and sustained the fastest economic growth in human history. We are, however, alive to the threats in the rim, which deserve much more multinational cooperation and multinational attention if we hope to sustain the economic progress achieved so far. Piracy remains a threat to shipping in the Straits of Malacca, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden. Criminal networks are active in piracy, illicit trafficking of persons, firearms, narcotics, as well as illegal fishing. In addition, competition and meddling for influence and resources in the region by extra-regional powers has also intensified. Unless addressed with nuance, this will continue undermining the security of the coastal states and the maritime domain, and indeed the livelihoods of millions of people. On this confluence of opportunity and threat, Mr. President, allow me to underscore the following action points that I recommend the Council and the international community to consider. The first is that we need better coordinated existing maritime security strategies and mediation mechanisms. This we can by strengthening the international legal regime and institutions at the forefront of addressing maritime security. Secondly, geopolitical rivalries that manifest in insecurity of the maritime domain must be limited. Competition between established and rising powers leaves us all worse off. Instead, we need a strengthened emphasis on observing international law and resisting the lure of promoting proxy rivalries in pursuit of narrow interests. Third is our understanding that the threats to the maritime security, such as terrorism at sea, piracy, and robbery at sea, are predominantly a factor of land-based instability, meaning that secure maritime routes and economic zones depend on helping develop more capable and legitimate states able to resolve domestic as well as regional challenges. And fourth, that international cooperation should prioritize equipping and training effective national coast guards, a priority contextualized regional and sub-regional approach, I believe, should be the way to go. And last and not least, Mr. President, it is a reminder that the rising sea levels, as well as the extreme weather conditions, courtesy of climate change, threatens the existence of some small island states and coastal populations, and therefore successful global climate change adaptation and mitigation is key to the security of these states. Mr. President, let me, in closing my remarks, encourage more thinking and innovation to be devoted to developing ambitious free and fair trade regimes in areas such as the Indian Ocean Rim. I am confident that this can deliver economic prosperity to a large proportion of the world's poorest and therefore greatly change the world for the better. I take this opportunity also to wish India every success in this month of your presidency, and I thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you, Excellency, for your statement. I also thank you for your presence today. Kenya is an important voice in the discussions on maritime security. I now give the floor to the Prime Minister of Vietnam.
Mr. President Modi, Excellencies, good evening from Hanoi. And thank you very much, Mr. President, for taking the initiative and convening the first ever Security Council open debate on enhancing maritime security. Even when the world is devoting much resource to the fight against COVID-19, the topic of our deliberation is of strategic and substantial significance, and I very much appreciate it. Vietnam especially commends and echoes India's 5S approach at the Security Council. Vietnam will join India and other countries to promote dialogue, cooperation, and mutual respect for global peace and prosperity. I would like to thank the previous briefer for your extensive and insightful presentation, and I echo your sentiments. Mr. President, oceans and seas provide an immense resource for mankind. They also serve as the lifeline of international trade and the gateway connecting countries and continents, and are critical to the prosperity of states and nations at large. Recognizing the importance of oceans and seas, nations have created important cooperation mechanisms, both bilateral and multilateral, at regional and global levels. Most remarkably, the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea has truly become the constitution of oceans and seas, the universal and unified legal framework within which all activities in the oceans and seas must be carried out, and the basis for international cooperation to address common challenges. Nevertheless, at sea, we are faced with both traditional and non-traditional security challenges, as the previous briefers have touched upon. Terrorism and criminal acts, especially organized crime, have been expanding in scope and complexity as against what we think. Climate change, sea level rise, and pollution of the marine environment, especially by plastic debris and degradation of the marine ecosystem, have caused serious and long-term consequences. Violations of international law, even threats or use of force, have escalated tension and affected peace, friendship, security, safety, and freedom of navigation and trade, as well as efforts to address non-traditional security challenges. Therefore, preserving and enhancing maritime security is in the common interest and has become an urgent task and shared responsibility of the entire international community. Mr. President, as a littoral state, Vietnam comprehends profoundly the immense value of the sea as well as challenges to maritime security, as we are witnessing. Vietnam is implementing the strategy for sustainable development of the marine economy, which aims to utilize marine resources in a sustainable and responsible manner to contribute to the country's overall development. The strategy also aims to enhance Vietnam's law enforcement capacity, ensuring effective settlement of maritime issues and safeguarding the sovereign right, jurisdiction, and other legitimate interests of Vietnam over its maritime zones. Vietnam persistently pursues a foreign policy of peace, independence, self-reliance, multilateralization, diversification of international relations. As a trusted friend, partner, and a reliable member of the international community, we stand ready to cooperate and exchange information and share experience with other countries in effort to address maritime security issues and to contribute positively to the maintenance of peaceful and secure maritime environment and sustainable development in the region and the world. In that connection, I would like to make the following proposals. First, it is imperative that states and international organizations develop a comprehensive, extensive, and profound awareness of the importance of ocean and seas and the threats to maritime security. Such awareness shall form the basis for greater responsibility and political will to strengthen confidence and develop more cohesive and effective cooperation arrangements in order to preserve and utilize oceans and seas in a sustainable manner and safeguard a peaceful and stable maritime environment. Resources should be made available for the implementation of national strategies and regulations to this end. Second, maritime security is a global issue and therefore requires global solutions. We need to take a global approach to address them. We need a comprehensive approach based on cooperation, dialogue, and international law, and forge stronger cooperation both through bilateral and multilateral channels and at regional, interregional, and global levels to effectively address maritime security challenges that are global in scope. Vietnam proposes the development of a network of arrangements and initiatives for regional maritime security with the United Nations working as a coordinator to bolster information and experience sharing, coordinate actions, and address common challenges in a timely manner in the global scope. Vietnam values and actively takes part in initiatives and mechanisms in ASEAN and between ASEAN and its partners for practical cooperation in the South China Sea. They provide forums for dialogue and confidence building and help coordinate maritime security cooperation efforts. Vietnam is determined to work with ASEAN and China to seriously, fully, and effectively implement the 22 Declaration of Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, DOC, and those negotiate an effective and substantive Code of Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, COC, consistent with international law, in particular, UNCLOS 1982. In addition, Vietnam calls upon all countries and multilateral institutions, especially UN agencies, to step up assistance and pay due attention to the hardship and interest of developing countries. as a whole and this region in particular. Third, the policies, regulations, and conducts of states at sea must be in line with international law, especially the United Nations Charter and UNCLOS 1982. States shall uphold fully the legal obligations under the Convention, respect the rights, interests, and legitimate economic activities of relevant states, settle disputes through peaceful means in line with international law, respect the diplomatic and legal processes, and ensure the freedom, safety, security of navigation and overflight without resorting to acts that would complicate the situation or create tension in the region. Mr. President, it is my strong belief and fervent hope that the Security Council will uphold its primary role and responsibility in maintaining international peace and security and continue to make important and concrete contributions to enhancing maritime security. Vietnam stands ready to make greater contributions to promoting dialogue and building confidence and joins the international community to maintain security at sea and to realize the ocean's enormous potential for a future of peace, prosperity, and cooperation, as cooperation and peace is the prevailing trend in the world today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, I congratulate you on your appointment as the Prime Minister of Vietnam earlier this year. Excellencies, I thank all dignitaries for their valuable participation. I hope today's meeting will be a landmark in our collective efforts to combat threats in the maritime domain. I now request my External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, to preside over the rest of the debate. I thank you all.
I thank the Prime Minister for chairing today's meeting and guiding the deliberations. It is my honor to represent him for the rest of the meeting. I now give the floor to the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister of the Republic of Niger. Excellency, you have the floor.
Mr. President, heads of state and government, members of the Council, I'd like to begin by thanking Prime Minister Narendra Modi on India's assumption of the presidency of the United Nations Security Council for the month of August. Yours is a high responsibility which you are assuming on behalf of your great country, which is always on point when it comes to contributing to common efforts for international peace and security. You can count on Niger, and we will spare no effort to facilitate your task. I would also like to welcome the opportunity given to us to debate such an important subject for international peace and security, namely maritime security. Indeed, no party in the world is free from the consequences of maritime piracy, which is constantly growing and is dangerously compromising the freedom of maritime circulation and the security necessary for transshipments of goods and which contributes to a thriving international trade. I'd like to thank His Excellency Mr. Félix Antoine Tshisekedi, President of the Conference of Heads of State and Government of the African Union, for his contribution to the current debate. We know that maritime security is, for the African continent, also a source of great concern. You'll remember that the African Union organized from the 10th to the 15th of October 2016 in Lomé a special summit on maritime safety and security. And that led to the adoption of the African Charter on Maritime Security. Finally, I would like to express my thanks to Madam Maria Luisa Ribeiro Viotti, Chef de Cabinet of the Secretary General of the United Nations, and to Ghada Fatih Wali, Executive Director of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, for their introductory briefings. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the seas and the oceans represent more than 2/3 of the surface of our planet. Billions of people depend on them for their subsistence. Moreover, the seas and oceans constitute, in one way or another, a major sector for the global economy. Today, more than 90% of global trade takes place via the maritime route. These are not just strategic maritime routes, but they're also precious areas for fishing and for the extraction of hydrocarbons and other minerals. This is why we believe that this issue calls more than any other for a strengthening of cooperation and for a better management of subsequent prosperity. We therefore have the urgent need to safeguard maritime security because it's an important guarantee for international peace and development. Ladies and gentlemen, maritime security, as we know, is precarious despite the tireless efforts that we are deploying to preserve it. Indeed, the proliferation and sophistication of criminal acts in the marine environment have become an ongoing threat, persistent threat for international peace and security. These disastrous acts have had an effect on economic activity and fuel illegal financial flows that are affected by this phenomenon. They also damage prospects for development and damage marine flora and fauna. The African continent pays a heavy price for these criminal acts perpetrated on the high seas. Whereas in the first decade of the 21st century, it was the coasts of Somalia and the Gulf of Aden which were the epicenter for diversion of merchant vessels, maritime security has now grown in size and reached the Gulf of Guinea a decade ago. It's particularly affecting the oil industry, and piracy is also leading to the taking of hostages for ransom and drugs and human trafficking. These are frequent practices. Niger, a landlocked country, has its closest port 1,000 kilometers away from the capital Niamey, and it suffers the full force of the deterioration of climate security on the coasts of its neighbors, where we depend on those ports for the transit of our international trade. This has often led to shortages of all kinds, affecting the basic foodstuffs, leading to dire social repercussions. This is why, as has been done in the Gulf of Aden, the international community must pay particular attention to the phenomenon of maritime piracy by strengthening, in particular, the means to combat this phenomenon in the Gulf of Guinea. Here we would like to welcome the efforts undertaken at national level by coastal states in the area, as well as the precious support provided by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime to put an end to this scourge. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would like to formulate some recommendations to contribute to strengthening maritime security as it exists today. The first of these is political. Just as we have strongly encouraged cooperation in the fight against terrorism and the COVID-19 pandemic, it is indispensable that we consolidate our cooperation multilaterally, with the United Nations organization leading the charge. In this regard, we can already depend on regional and sub-regional mechanisms that already exist, such as the Yaoundé architecture established by ECOWAS, ECAS, and the Gulf of Guinea Commission, the Integrated Maritime Strategy of ECOWAS, and the Integrated Maritime Strategy for Africa 2050. My second recommendation is of a legal nature. We must ensure that we have a common definition of maritime security covering the vast range of crimes committed in the marine environment. This definition would allow us to harmonize our criminal codes and bring those responsible for these crimes to justice. The arrest and prosecution of a number of those involved in piracy, thanks to international legal cooperation between states, has undoubtedly contributed to a reduction in these criminal acts. And finally, my third recommendation, I would like to invite our partners to invest more in development projects and initiative in order to create opportunities for young people in the countries or regions which are the most afflicted afflicted by maritime insecurity. I thank you for your attention.
His Excellency Mr. Masudou for his statement. We look forward to closely working with you, both multilaterally and bilaterally. I now give the floor to the Democratic Republic of Congo as a briefer under Rule 37 and in capacity as the representative of the Chair of the African Union, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. The floor is yours.
Je m'excuse. On ne vous entend pas toujours, il faut ouvrir.
We were listening in to the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and now the External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, presiding over that high-level UN Security Council debate on maritime security, laying out the agenda, the priorities, and stressing on the importance of maintaining international peace and security and maritime security.